I went and spoke at something the other day for some high school students, and they asked for like a one sentence at the end. And I said, my one sentence is, do the thing that makes you scared. Do it, because that's where you're going to grow.
Welcome to Matters of Soul Importance, where we dive deeply into topics of both earthly and eternal consequence. I'm Roxanne Solonin, faith columnist and features writer for The Forum, author, and speaker. My guest today, Lynn Kotrba, is a local gal, a fellow mom of many, you could say, although Lynn's got me beat by 3. However, along with her 8 children, Lynn and her husband Jason have a horde of other lives that they tend to every day. Sheep, pigs, chickens, llamas, and cats that prowl about their farmstead. Oh, and we can't forget about the dog. For the past 29 years, Lynn has worked with youth from all backgrounds through her work in foster care. And for the past 8 years, through the youth programs she has created through the organization she co-founded with her husband, Harvest Hope Farm. I've interviewed Lynn before, and she has a fascinating story to share about how God has led her into this interesting, often loud, and always colorful life, managing all critters, kids, and a vibrant faith. Indeed, behind her ambition, there's a spirit that drives it all, one born in love. I look at Lynn in awe because while we have a few areas of crossover, she has accomplished so many amazing things with her husband, achievements that leave me and my solitary life with my laptop in the dust. I'm excited to dive into her story of what it's like to raise a larger family in this world of slight, daring to ask how her vocation as a mom has brought her closer to God. Maybe we can learn a thing or two about the abundance of God through this mom of many who, through various health challenges, has learned to live off His grace most of all. Welcome, Lynn, to Matters of Soul Importance. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing wonderful.
Wonderful. Well, today we're going to ask, what can large families teach us about God? I'm excited for this conversation. I have a pretty large family, not as large as yours, but enough to understand maybe a little bit what we're going to be talking about today. I probably have a few experiences to toss in as well. But first, before we go into this very interesting topic, because I think in today's world, I call it a minimizing world where we kind of maybe don't think as abundantly as we could, right? And there's reasons for that. But sometimes God breaks in and gives us another viewpoint. So as we get ready for that, though, I want to hear about Lynn. Tell me a little bit about, I've interviewed you before, but I know there's always more to learn. So I know a little bit about your background, but share a little bit about how you grew up and some of the things that influenced your faith life. And we'll kind of start there.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. I'm the youngest of 6 kids. Grew up in East Grand Forks with my mom and my dad and 5 older siblings. One that was pretty much out of the house when I was like 4. Wonderful, large family, always around aunts, uncles, cousins. My mom was diagnosed with Huntington's when I was about 10 years old and died when I was 13. So that was a huge factor in my growing up. Had been sick most of my life. But having a large extended family with aunts and uncles was amazing through that time. And our faith was always important. Went to Sacred Heart from kindergarten all till I graduated. Met my husband.
I'm going to bring you back. I'm going to bring you back. I haven't really delved into this, but I do want to a little bit. Tell us a little bit about what that was like, if you don't mind, when you were 13. Like, what do you remember about that time when it seemed like, 13 is when, like 12 is when you start thinking, your brain is developed enough to start thinking beyond the immediate. You start putting things together. What do you remember observing or feeling, or what sort of are some highlights of that time that have helped form you, would you say, or just some memories that are pivotal for you?
Well, one big thing that I really remember is my dad. My sister and I were both in school going to Catholic school. So this was early on when my mom got sick and she couldn't work anymore. And my dad wondering, like, how was he going to pay for school anymore? And going to our priest, and this will come back later in my life, but going to our priest, Father Jerry, and saying, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to take care of this. And I might have to pull my kids out of school. And Father saying, we are going to make this work. We want your children in school. We want the faith surrounding them. So we were able to stay in Catholic school. And the people that surrounded us during that time, interesting that sometimes when someone's sick, people move away. They don't know what to do. They stop reaching out. So it's at times it felt like we didn't have support from the people we expected to get it from, but then people showed up that we wouldn't have expected it from. People from church, people that we weren't real close to, but became close to because they supported us through that. When my dad went to Father and asked for help to keep us in school, his secretary was a sister, and I don't remember her name. Years ago, when I was pregnant with Hannah, our second, I went to Monsignor Wald at Holy Spirit and asked for some guidance on some things revolving around Huntington's, and he said I needed to go to spiritual direction. So he sent me to the sisters, and I was connected with, and I wish I remembered her name, but I was connected with the sister for spiritual direction down at, it's not there anymore, the Presentation Sisters. And I started telling her my story, and she said, stop, what's your maiden name? And I said, Carview. And she said, I was Father Jerry's secretary at Sacred Heart. I knew your mom. I knew your dad. And to just have that connection come back was super cool. But, at 13, I learned a lot about people, and that because they might step away doesn't mean they don't care, but it means maybe that they don't want to see the loss. They don't want to see the grief, and they don't know how to deal with it, and to not take that personally, which when you're 13, you don't realize that, I guess. And now I know in hindsight that that's what was happening. Yeah.
What I found is that usually people who have gone through it, so they've kind of tread that road a little bit, and they know what it's like, and they're the first to charge in.
Yes.
And then the ones that you're scared. I brought something up recently in a podcast that when people are suffering and when we draw close to them, we enter into the suffering with them, and that we either are drawn into or repelled by. If some people can't handle that, right? They're not ready. And so, there's a lot to mind there. But of course, as adults, then we can look back and kind of understand. I had the same thing when I had lost a baby, and some of the in miscarriage and some of the responses hurt me as far as, well, you can have another one. It's like, but what about that one? Like, that wasn't something that was helpful at the time. Later, I realized they didn't know what to say. They were trying to help. So you kind of have some, but anyway, you do learn about human nature. There is a human nature, and there's a supernatural nature. And so sometimes our human nature comes out first. So, well, that wasn't what I was expecting to hear. Tell me just a little bit about your mom too. What were some of the qualities that maybe you see in yourself now? Because I don't know how much.
Yeah. So, my memories of my mom are actually, I don't have a lot of memories of her, sadly, because of her not being sick, because so much of my childhood was her being sick. She was a caretaker. She had a home daycare, took care of many, many children in her daycare. Obviously took care of all of us kids, loved to cook. She loved family, she had a few grandkids before she passed away, and loved having them around and just being surrounded by family. loved to talk, loved to play cards. When she went into the nursing home, she was at a point where she wasn't able to talk much anymore. Her disease, Huntington's disease, had kind of taken that away. But one of the things she always said was one day at a time. And that's on my sweatshirt.
Oh, yes.
And now I kind of live by that saying a lot when things get crazy, that, okay, I just need to take it one day at a time. And I think a lot of those things that I just said about her, I do see in myself.
You kind of described yourself a little bit there when you talked about her.
Yeah. I mean, we have kids around all the time. I love big family gatherings. I love having all my kids home. Like, that's the best feeling in the world, when everyone is home for a night or a couple nights. And yeah.
I'm kind of skipping ahead of where I was going to go, but I think maybe this is okay to broach the topic, what is Huntington's, because it has affected your family deeply.
Yeah.
And so tell us, because a lot of people don't know what it is. Can you kind of describe it a little bit?
So Huntington's is a genetic disease passed down through families. So my mom had it. So all of us children had a 50% chance of having it. It is a combination of Alzheimer's, ALS, and Parkinson's all together in one. Most people, it develops between like 35 and 45 years old, but there is a juvenile form, and some people develop it later in life. So it ends up eventually taking pretty much everything from you. It's always terminal. So my mom and sister both died at 49 from Huntington's. My mom was diagnosed at 44, I believe. And my sister, we knew that she had it before she was diagnosed, but she wasn't officially diagnosed till her early 40s.
How scary to see the signs in her and then know that's probably going to be her fate as well.
Yeah.
And we'll get back a little bit more into that, but it affects, from what I understand, the personality. Like the whole person kind of changes, and so that would be so devastating. And at 13, and so I wanted to bring it up because I really, it has been a defining disease in your life. Like it has continued. Like you can't escape it. Your mom died, your sister, and then so you sort of have lived with this wondering about it. But now let's go back into, you were starting to talk about your husband. So when did you meet Jason?
So Jason and I met we met in middle school, but we started dating in high school. I'm a year older than him, so we're high school sweethearts. He was a junior, I was a senior when we started dating. Got married. Well, we started dating in 93 and we got married in 97. So,
Okay. And did you, like, from the get-go say, we're going to have a bunch of children? What was, because we're going to talk about large families today.
Yeah. So I don't know that we ever said we were going to have a certain number of kids. I knew I wanted a lot of kids. He was kind of like, oh, whatever. When we first got married, we thought we would have children right away. And we were 21 and 22. And I had just graduated. We were both I was doing my master's. He was finishing his undergrad. And so we had kind of planned that once we had both graduated, we would start having children. And God's plan is not always the same as ours. I had my first miscarriage when I was 24. We ended up having 2 miscarriages before having Autumn, our oldest. And I remember when we eventually got pregnant with Autumn, I remember one of my doctors saying that your body can kind of run in years of 7. And he said, if you're going to want to have a lot of kids, keep having them.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And Autumn was born in 2005. 2004, Autumn was born. Hannah was born in 2005. Sean in 2007. Joseph in 2008. Olivia in 2010. So we took that advice and just kept having
the window's
babies.
open right now. Yeah.
And, we love kids. I loved being pregnant. I actually felt much better when I was pregnant than when I wasn't. I had chronic migraines, and I didn't have them when I was pregnant.
Wow.
And I totally felt like motherhood is a gift. Parenthood is a gift. These kids were such a blessing to us. Don't get me wrong. It was chaos sometimes. In there, we did have some miscarriages as well. But we just kind of looked at having children as a gift from God. And we look at all of our kids as a blessing, and there's a meaning for them. And God has a plan for each of them. And, they're going to do things to make this world better. So how could we say no to having all of them?
And I think the miscarriages at the front played a part, I would think, psychologically, because my miscarriage happened after 2 babies. So, and I've thought about how hard it would be if it was the first baby. It was still hard. And I thought, is my body broken now? But what helped me heal was looking back to see, no, I did do this before, because you feel broken. It's like, no, my body did do this. I was able to do this. So maybe again, and I have these two, But I've always thought it'd be so hard if it was your first one, because then you'd really go into a panic, because it does put you into the place of, am I not going to get to live out this desire that God put in my heart as a little girl, So then then you have that gift, it's like, I can see where it's like, okay, let's
just keep having them. If we can, let's
because
just
you started with a loss, and then
2 losses.
Right. And then the blessing. Right. So I can see, and it would confuse me if someone would be closed after that, because, you see God's like pouring in his love there.
Yeah. And, so Jason was an elementary teacher and then an elementary principal, and I was working with kids in group homes, and to be able to come home to our own children that, kids just pour into you if you pour into them. And it was just a wonderful experience, having all them and having them together. Like that was a big thing for me. Like I wanted my kids to be close in age. So our first 7 were all born within 10 years. And they all kind of have their one that's close in age to them. I guess the 3 little girls, well, they're not little anymore, but I always refer to them as the 3 little girls. They were all close together.
Did Jason grow up in a big family, or
4 in his family?
Okay.
So 4 in his, 6 in mine.
Okay.
So his wasn't, huge, and I wouldn't say mine was really. 6 is big, but I don't know. Now I don't even think 8 is that big anymore.
Have you confronted the culture? Because I know I certainly did. Like after we had a boy and a girl, and then it was like, that was it. That should be it. So I just remember a conversation in our living room where one of our friends said, well, you're done now, right? Like there's a discomfort with anything that isn't replacement in this time.
Yeah.
Maybe it's changing a little bit since I went through that. But and then it was just a series of, as I had more children asking if they were all mine, if it was from 2 different marriages, like just strangers would comment.
I have so many people still that say, are they all yours? Did you adopt any? Are there any twins? Or, did you guys both have kids when you got married already? Like lots of questions. The thing that probably offended me the most is we had a minivan. Nope, we had our big black van, I think. And we were getting out of it. So we had a 12-passenger van, and we were getting out of it at a restaurant, which is very rare for us to go to a restaurant, extremely rare. And I opened the door, and the kids all started getting out, and someone next to us getting out of their car said, what is this, a clown car? Oh. And I was so offended by that. Like, and one of our kids heard it, and they were like, what what did that mean? Like, and so, I mean, that was probably the worst thing that we ever had said to us. A lot of people, oh, are you done? You must be done, things like that, like you said. Family members that have said, what, you're having another one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just...
Yeah, we had pressure from within as well, which is really hard to like, hey, you should probably do something about this or whatever. And
how are you going to afford it? How are you going to, and in my mind, it's hard.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is really hard. Those things are hard, whether it's finances or the chaos of everything. And you find a way. You make it work. God sends blessings that you have no idea are going to show up.
My dad was always the most open, and he was the 7th of 9 kids, and he was the youngest boy during the end of the Great Depression. But I always knew, like, when we told about it, revealed a new life, like, he would always embrace. And that's because he would, in this world, he might not exist. You know what I mean? So he was just, like, he knew it would be fine, and it was a blessing. And it's just telling, I guess, of where people are at.
So in 2020, we found out we were pregnant with Michael, and he's 7 years younger than Ava, our next youngest. And, I say to so many people, like, he was exactly what God knew we needed at that time, like that our family needed. He was born August of 2020, and he was something, his birth was something that, like, slowed down our family. Like, we were running the rat race. Everyone was busy doing their things. We had 2 kids in high school at the time, 2 in middle school, handful in elementary school. And we were busy, like, going. And when Michael was born, it just, like, slowed everything. Obviously, COVID at the time slowed everything too. But having Michael and the blessing he was for our kids, and just everyone just kind of stopped and marveled at this child who, when he was born, we didn't know if he was going to live. And when we brought him home from the hospital, it was just amazing to see the impact that he had on on our kids, on our whole family. And God totally knew what we needed at that time to slow us down.
I've mentioned before too, like, I feel like with our younger kids, we were more mature parents, and I felt different in that. When we were with our younger the earlier ones, the first ones, I felt like we were just kind of trying to learn this. And we didn't grow up from huge family. I just had one sister. My husband has 2 siblings. So it was kind of a new thing for us to be, having a larger family for today's standards. Seemed a little bit chaotic. But with the younger 2, especially probably, all of a sudden I was more mature, and I was looking at it differently, and I could see the blessings. I could see more. I could see more about how this was shaping our family, how it was blessing our family. And you just have a different perspective. And I felt like I slowed down too. I was like, this is, I'm not, before I was, like, in the mire, and this time I'm more, like, kind of on the outside, like, appreciating it already. So
yeah, that's totally where we were and where we are. Like,
and then also, your kids are, then you're getting to see how the little one. And one of the things that's so beautiful about a large family is, some of our pregnancies were like, oh, we're pregnant again. Yeah. But the kids never had that reaction.
Oh, no.
It was, and then it just, like, snapped you out of it. It's just like they were always so excited, like, because they didn't see any of the challenges that were going to be coming, where you kind of, as parents, you're kind of preparing for, okay, this is going to shift this, and we're going to have to do this. Yeah. They just full out embraced.
It's all joy. Yeah. Just, yeah. I will say, when we told them we were pregnant with Michael, some of them were like, really? For real?
Because it kind of seemed like your family was
it had
complete.
Been 7 years. So no one expected that at the time. And we had a couple of high school kids, and then once they realized, like, this is real, like, the joy was so much there. And no one ever was, thinking, oh, why or anything like that. They were all just so happy about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and of course, there's we had a couple of things where one of the little ones wanted to give her brother back to the hospital.
Yeah.
There's always going to be a little bit of that, but that's because everything shifts, and then the baby isn't the baby anymore, right? So that's a big shift for the baby, right? But then your baby wasn't as little.
Yeah, she was 7, so she was good.
I can only imagine, like, when Michael was born, were they able to go to the hospital?
They
that was
were
COVID.
not.
Okay.
Well, it was COVID, and he was in NICU, so they weren't able to go, but the NICU nurses set up a live cam on him.
Oh, okay.
So the ones that had phones, they were able to watch him on the live cam. And yeah.
And then think of this world he came into.
Right? Right?
This is just this blossoming world. Yeah. I do want to talk about your life, because I don't know that you always knew you were going to live on a farm, but because that wasn't always the case. So tell about your farm life.
Yeah. So, I don't know that we ever really planned to live on a farm until probably, we moved to our farm in 2015. So maybe about 5 years before that, we really started looking for a farm, just because we wanted our kids, we wanted them, out in nature more. We kind of wanted a break. We joke that because of our occupations, we just wanted to escape from people, because we were always around people. And we just wanted to be away a little bit and be able to experience nature with our family and the outdoors with our family. And so after many years of looking, in 2015, we found our farm, and we knew at that time, because of the way it all happened, which it is purely by God's grace that we have our farm, we knew that we had to find a way to bless others. At the time, I thought we'd have, gardens and some chickens and our yard and our forest, and it would be this place where we raise our kids. And we started praying about it, and just really thinking and praying about how we could use our farm to impact others. And 2018, Harvest Hope Farm was born. Now we have 200 kids that come out every summer for camps. We have all different types of animals that you can imagine. Sheep, chickens, pigs, llamas, a miniature horse.
And most people, Lynn, I think, would say you had a big family. That was that, and you're working too. Besides that, how it seems unbelievable what you've done. But at the same time, listening to you talk about being open to life, what I see unfolding here is that all along you were asking God to discern the next steps. And that didn't stop when Michael came into your life, right?
Yeah,
it didn't
nothing stopped at any point. We have always, I think Jason and I have always lived by, we need to listen. What's the next thing we can do? What is God asking us to do now? Sometimes it sounds, looks, feels crazy. And other people do ask us, why? Why are you doing more? In 2017, spring of 2017, I had some health issues that did not allow me to go into work because I wasn't able to drive because of some medication I was on. So I started doing a lot of walking in our forest. And during that time, I started having visions of a rosary walk and of sheep and lots of kids, and had no idea we had no sheep at the time. We had 7 kids ourselves, but it was lots of kids. And this happened a few times. And I finally told Jason about it, and he said, you need to open up your ears and listen. God is telling you the next step we need to take. And at that time, I was like, sheep? We don't really know anything about sheep. Why would we want any sheep? And soon after that, I talked to a good friend of mine and told her what was going on. And I said, we kind of have this idea of doing some camps for kids. And she said, let's do it. So we started planning for those. And then we learned about these sheep that are used for Huntington's research. And we just kept moving forward and taking that next step that God was telling us to take. And now here we are 8 years later, involved in Huntington's disease research, using our sheep, having many kids out to the farm each summer for camps. And, we're just always listening to God's plan in our life. And then, yes, lots of kids, big family, lots of people saying, how can you do this? Why can you do this? Why are you doing it? And our kids have totally bought into all of it. And everything we do is like, it's not just me, or it's not just me and Jason. It's our whole family is doing it. Our kids all have their roles that they play. And some enjoy some things better than others, but we've found a way for them all to be involved. And it goes so much even beyond our family. I mean, we have so many people that support us and help us.
I will say, I've been out there multiple times. It's a peaceful place. Everyone should get to experience something like that. I grew up in a small town with a lot of rural and some friends that lived out in the country, and it brings me back to that peaceful experience that I had when I would visit them, and going out to visit where my dad was a hired hand for a while, just being in nature. And we need that peace. Everything you're saying makes sense. The way, getting away from people, and yet you're drawing people into your life. I love thinking about your kids, and I've seen it in action also, how your willingness and yes to open your lives to an abundant life that seems insane on the outside has allowed them then to live abundantly like that too. Like our lives should be a pouring out, and God gives the grace. That's the thing. Like you can't make sense of this, Lynn, from the outside.
You can't.
Not in our world.
Yeah, and I read something this morning about discernment and being able to take that time when you're in the midst of the chaos to just like sit back and discern, like, okay, what is the next step? And not necessarily act in the chaos, but to take that time to really think about things and think about what your next step is. And I feel like you said, like if someone's looking in, it looks like chaos, but we've been given the grace to, like you said, pour into people, pour into kids, pour into adults. For us, it's not chaos. We love it. And
I've seen it in action. It's very ordered, and the kids kind of know their place, and they're eager to jump into their spots. And so just to think of these little arrows that you're putting out into the world, because they're going to have this experience then as they go out, and yet you're still going to be giving life, for as long as God says it. One of the things, I think we could look upon this and go, oh, wow, they're so like doing all these things. I could never do that. And it also takes, it takes both couples being in a certain place and on board. And not everyone has that. Not everyone has the situation, but you did have the situation and you were open to God's voice.
Yeah. And, I mean, we feel very blessed that I feel blessed that Jason is willing to say yes to some of my crazy ideas, because I'm like the idea person behind all of our camps and behind all of that. And he, how would I say
he has a very calm demeanor.
He has a very calm demeanor that can sometimes drive me crazy because I'm the doer.
Yeah.
And he's the, hold on, let's just look at this and see what we should do next. But it complements, we complement each other well in that way. And some of our kids are the same way. Some are definitely doers, and some are, more
Hold
like
on.
Dad, where they'll think about it and be like, calm down, Mom. I mean, I have one of my boys often is like, calm down, Mom. Like
she comes with another crazy idea.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're very fortunate, and I get it. Some people don't experience that, but I went and spoke at something the other day for some high school students, and they asked for like a one sentence at the end. And I said, my one sentence is, do the thing that makes you scared. Do it, because that's where you're going to grow. And we've had a lot of stuff that has made us scared over our marriage. Miscarriages, and I was scared to have another baby, and we've had lots of babies through those miscarriages. And in regard to Huntington's, we've had lots of scary things, and just even with the farm, the next thing we're gonna do crazy ideas that we've had, and okay, let's just go with it and see what happens. And we've grown a lot from it. Yeah.
One event that I love that I want to talk about before we go to the break is the Llama with Mama. Is that what it is? Yeah.
Llama wine with Mama.
Yeah. I've been involved in that. Tell a little bit about that. It'll be over by the time this drops, but maybe next year.
Yeah. So we have an event called Llama Wine with Mama. It's for women 21 plus. One of our camps we run is called Llama Camp for preschoolers. So that's where Llama Wine with Mama came from. And it's just our way of bringing women 21 plus, whether they're a mom or not, out to the farm to experience what the farm is about. It's kind of a summer gala meal. There's always an activity. This year we're doing a floral bar. There's a wine tasting class this year. And then Jason and I always speak about our experience with Huntington's disease, because this is a specific fundraiser for Huntington's. And I think so many times parents send their kids to the farm for camps, and they appreciate the camps and they love the camps for their kids. And we have lots of kids that come over and over again. And it's the moms that do a lot of that planning, but then the moms don't get to experience the farm. So this is our way of bringing it to them in a way that they'll enjoy.
Have an adult night with and it's always been beautiful.
It's always been beautiful. Yeah.
Fingers crossed, prayers for this year. But
some years it's rained right before, or the winds calm down right before, So
it's really nice for those who take part. And I like getting my friends together for that event. Yeah. So, well, on the other side of this break, I want to talk about something that I've known as a friend, that you hesitated to get tested for Huntington's, and recently you did do that finally. So I want to hear about that, what the results are, what the effects are, and even the decision leading up to that. So we'll be back with more Lynn Kotrba after this message.
Local news affects your life, giving you the confidence and clarity to make better decisions every day. You can support that with a digital subscription. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to sign up today.
Welcome back to Matters of Soul Importance. We have Lynn Kotrba here. She is talking about what can large families teach us about God, but she's also talking about Huntington's disease, because this is a disease that has impacted her family greatly and still is there in her life. And I've been privy to a little bit of her thought process through the years of, am I going to get tested? Big question, because Lynn lost her mom and her sister. And what age were they at, Lynn?
They were both 49 when they passed away. So my mom passed away in 1989. I was 13, almost 14, and my sister passed away actually. Today's the anniversary of her death.
The day of the recording.
Yeah, in 2011.
Eternal rest.
Yeah.
What was her name?
Lisa.
I remember the year that I went to the Llama event, and it was the year that you were turning the age that they had
Lisa
turned.
Was, yeah.
And that was like a critical time, which of course it would be. It's like, okay, this is where we lost them. Yeah. And now here I am.
Yeah.
And you still hadn't made a decision as to, you were grappling like, I have this big family. I'm involved in Huntington's disease. I'm connected with this community with this devastating disease. Am I going to find out? So talk about that journey. And what did you have to grapple with in these years leading up?
Yeah. So there was a point in my life in high school where I wasn't sure that I would get married. This was before I met Jason. I was at a point where I thought I would maybe become a nun because I did not want anyone to go through what my dad had gone through with my mom when she was sick. And I knew at that time that if I were tested young, you can't be tested until you're 18. They don't allow you to. But I knew at that time that if I was tested and found out I was positive, I would have either committed suicide or became a nun because I did not want to see anyone go through what my dad had went through. So that was my thought process when I was like 16, 17 years old. Enter in Jason, my now husband, and a lot changed.
Wait a minute. Maybe I don't. Yeah. Maybe I'm not going to be a nun, and maybe I don't want to end my life.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. And so much changed. In meeting him, but also in our faith growing together from the time we were in high school, then all through college and early, adulthood. We got married young, 21 and 22, and having his support. But at that time, I didn't want to get tested because I didn't know where I stood with my mental health in regard to Huntington's. And I knew we'd have children, but I didn't know how that would, affect my decision on how many children I would have. And so we moved down to Fargo in 2003. And then Father Wald, but became Monsignor Wald, was our priest at Holy Spirit. And he was a good friend of Jason's when we moved here. And we became very, very close. And when I was pregnant with Autumn, I remember Jason and I having dinner with Monsignor, and I asked him, I said, should I be tested? And he said, I don't think you should right now. And he said, because you're stopping a miracle from happening. He said, if you are tested and you test positive, then you have it. And there's nothing that can be done other than, the treatments they have, which are not good. And he said, but if you're not tested, you just need to keep praying that you won't have this disease. And maybe one day later on, you'll decide to be tested. But he said, if you're tested now, you're stopping a miracle from happening. And that really resonated with me.
Good advice. Yeah.
And, I don't really remember if it was at that time or before that, but Jason started saying he has a prayer he says every night with me. And I think it was right about that time that it started. And it's, his prayer covers lots of things, but he always ends it with praying for my healing and my health. Mm-hmm. And so since I was about 29 years old, so I'm 51 now, so 22 years we have prayed that. And over the years, there's been times where I've thought, I have it. I know I have it, just because of weird things that have happened. And then other times where I think, no, I don't. And I knew I would probably never be tested till after I was 49. I've never really celebrated my birthday because of my sister and my mom. It's always been very hard for me to celebrate my birthday. So, about 2 years ago, when I was 49, my two of our older kids asked me if I was going to get tested and when I would get tested. And I knew at that point that I really needed to start really thinking about being tested for them, because
now it was affecting their psyche.
Yeah. And, they're thinking about their adulthood. Mm-hmm. One of them should have been 20 at the time, and the other one was 17. And, they were starting to think about their futures. And I didn't want them to go through the testing process and have it, have them have to deal with that.
So question.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a carrier, then they would be. If you're not a carrier, they wouldn't be?
They're not.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So that's
if
huge.
I don't have it, they don't. They're free, as they would state.
Okay, I'm going to go back before we get, because we're close to this decision here. But as you're talking, I'm thinking about the two shall become one. You're cleaved to Jason. This was something you knew about back then. This is what you were thinking about becoming a nun. And now he's in your life. I'm sure it's something that came into your discussion early on.
He's known forever.
So this is going to impact him. And he's got to, like, maybe we can't even have kids, or maybe she'll have a short life.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's known this all along. Obviously, it's came into our many discussions, even with finding out we're having another child. Like, oh my gosh.
This speaks to his faith too, because all along he's been journeying, not knowing if you're going to be with him or not. And yet you're saying yes to all these kids, and he's not sure if you're going to be around.
Yeah. And he is a very good and faithful servant. Like, he, is, I would say, the epitome of following your faith. And he just always says yes. And, there was one time when I asked him if he was worried, when he said yes. I mean, I've asked him many times if he's worried about something, and usually it's no, it'll all work out. God has a plan. It'll all work out. The day we were going in to get my results, we were sitting in the waiting room, and I looked at him and said, "Are you worried?" And he said, "Yes, I am." And that was, I think, the first time he ever told me he was worried about something.
Because before then, you're just, okay, God, here, I'm giving this to you, giving this to you. And all of a sudden it's like, well, now we're going to let earthly hands determine something here.
Yeah. Yeah. So I turned 50 last May of we're in 26. So May of 2025, I turned 50. And I didn't want to be in town for my 50th birthday. I just wanted to be with my family. So we went up to Lake Metagoshi, where we always go for our summer vacation. We took it early so that we were there for my birthday. And I just didn't want to be around other people. A lot of people knew that this was like a huge birthday for me, not just because I'm turning 50, but I mean, I had now outlived my mom and my sister who had died from Huntington's. And I always knew like it was going to be hard for me because of that. And then when we were gone that week, I really, started thinking about getting tested, and that I needed to do this, and still didn't really make the decision. And then October 19th of 2025, I decided I would do the testing. That's actually my sister's birthday. And that was the first day I was able to say out loud to Jason, like, let's do it. I want to be tested. And it wasn't just me in this decision. He was the other half of the decision. So, I voiced it to him that day. And then the following week, I called my doctor, and she made the referral over to genetics, and we started the process. There's a whole lot of stuff that goes into that. I mean, the actual test is pretty easy. It's just a blood test. But leading up to that, there was a lot of preparation we were doing. And our kids, we did not tell them that I was being tested because I didn't want them to worry for months. So we were trying to get me long-term care insurance. We were just trying to get some things into place. And then once that was all worked out, and we had met with the geneticist in November, and she went through all the stuff and all the ramifications of testing positive. And then in January, I called her and said, I'm ready for the blood test. And so we did that in February. Because Huntington's has such a dramatic effect on people when they find out they have it, we had to meet with the genetic counselor within 2 weeks of the blood draw. 2 weeks of them getting the results back. Okay. So we had that all set up. yeah, we went in and met with her. So the anniversary of my mom died February 22nd of 1989. And we got my results on February 23rd. Not by any planning, but that's just how it worked. And still had not, 2 people knew, no, 3 people knew that we were going through this. And actually, Autumn, our oldest daughter, we had told her about a month before. She's in communications, and she's doing a documentary on Huntington's. So she sort of followed us through the process. So she knew what was happening. And I remember being very nervous the day I went and had the blood draw. And then 2 weeks later, we went back, and surprisingly, those 2 weeks did not bother me. I thought I would be really
just like hanging on the edge of your,
and I wasn't like that. And
because it was really the decision, like that's where the buildup was. And then it's like, well, now it's just going to be, like you were pretty prepared.
I was pretty prepared, and I just felt like, well, it's in God's hands. There's nothing, there's nothing we've ever been able to do to change anything. And, so Jason and I went in, and I remember sitting in the waiting room and holding his hand, and I looked at him and said, "Are you worried?" And he said, "I am." And the geneticist came out and called us in, and we sat down, and she had a student with her. And right away when I saw the student, I thought, obviously it's either good or it's bad. And then I was debating in my head, would she have a student in here if it was bad? Or, what does she want the student to see? And, and that's the counselor in me. And she went through just a couple of things. And then she said, "Well, I have your results and you are negative." And I started sobbing. Like uncontrollably sobbing. And
that's years.
Yeah.
Years, your whole lifetime of wondering.
Since I really understood what it was probably when I was about 12. So, 40 years of running from. Someone later said you were running from a lion, you were running from a beast, and now you're not anymore. But I remember I was uncontrollably sobbing, and it felt so weird for me that I was. And it wasn't the reaction I expected to have, and then once I got control of myself, and we talked a little bit more with the genetic counselor, but I've done so much research that I didn't need to talk to her.
This wasn't a typical, you've been.
I've been involved with this my whole life, and so then we weren't in her office very much longer, and Jason and I left, and I think we both kind of walked out of the clinic in shock. Honestly, I was expecting a positive result because we had prepared ourselves that if it was positive, we would be okay. Right. The kids would be okay.
And human beings tend to prepare for the worst. Yeah, and especially if you're a planner like I am, I'm going to go for the worst case so I can get ready for that if need be.
Yeah. So, we walked out sort of in shock, and then we went and got in the car, and I ended up having an anxiety attack or a panic attack. My body just went crazy. And I knew what was happening, but I didn't understand why it was happening. And in the couple hours after we got our result, that happened twice, and Jason was with me both times. And then later, a good friend, when I told him about it, he was the one who said, Lynn, it was your body reacting because you had ran for so long. And
it's like you're collapsing at the end of a race or something.
Yeah.
Wow. We're so complex as creatures, like our minds. And
so we had planned to wait till all of our kids were home to tell them. And then I told Jason, hard. I said, I can't wait. Had it been positive, we definitely would have waited.
You would have just continued on as you have been.
Yeah. But now I had this news to share that was so good.
Like, it's like there was this, fork in the road, and you were on this other path you weren't even really thinking you would be. So how do you just pretend? With the ones that you love that are right in front of you. That would have been impossible.
Yeah. So we called Autumn and told her right away because she was the one who knew we were being tested, and she was out in Bismarck. So I called her, and actually her boss had her on film as she got the results because she knew I was going to be calling her, and she was overjoyed and started crying. And it was,
I'm sure her reaction was completely honest too.
Yes. And so she was our first call. Wow. And then we actually went and picked up a Dairy Queen cake and had written on it negative in purple, because purple is the color of rare diseases. And I was negative, and we brought that home. And at dinner that night, when we were done eating dinner, so our daughter Hannah was in Montana for school, but everyone else was home. And it just happened to work out that they were all going to be home for dinner. So after dinner, Jason went and got the cake. And it was funny because we told the kids we needed to have, they had started, people were finishing eating and they started getting up to go do their thing. And we said, no, you got to come back. I said, we're going to have a little family meeting. And they were all like, what? Because that doesn't happen unless there's something that we all need to really talk about.
Or you would have talked about it before dinner, but it was like a surprise family meeting.
Yeah, it was a surprise family meeting. So I said, nope, you guys all have to come back. We're going to have this family meeting. And I told Olivia, I said, call Hannah and get her on FaceTime. And they all went, what's going on? And someone said, is there bad news? And I said, nope, it's, just hold on, let's get Hannah on. And then they realized Jason wasn't in the room.
They thought you were pregnant.
They did. One of them said that. I think it was Ella looked at me and says, you're not pregnant, are you? And no, we're not. And so then Jason came in and he had this cake, and Hannah was on the phone, and before he set it down, I said, okay, let's have your guesses. And they all kind of guessed what the meeting was about. And then actually Joseph said, you got tested, didn't you? And you're negative. Aww. And everyone else at that moment went, and Sean was like, that's it. That's what's going on. And Jason set the cake down. And so then they all knew. And of course, everyone was happy. And I think they even were kind of like, okay, now what? They've always known about it. We've never hid any of it from them. They've always known.
Do we shut off our camp now? Do we send the sheep away?
Yeah. What now? They've all, I think it's in 8th grade at school, they have to do a science report on a disease, and their teacher has always saved Huntington's disease for them to be the one who does the report on it, does the poster presentation on it, because they know so much about it. So, it was like the way they had been living because of this disease was also impacted. Not that any of that's necessarily going to change, but all of a sudden it's like, okay, now we don't have to worry about this. And Sean looked at me and said, so.
And he's how old?
He's 18.
Okay.
Yeah. And he looked at me and said, so I can't have this disease, right? And I said, no, make sure, Mom. You can't.
Wow.
And they all were, you could really just kind of see that a weight lifted from all of them. And, I think back,
beautiful.
There was a time when we probably thought, how many kids should we have? Because you could have this disease. and how much I would now be like, I talk often about how my kids will change the world in some way. Like they will do things that, whether it's small or big, they're going to do things to impact other people. And had we decided, 20 years ago not to have them, like I'm so grateful that we said yes to all those pregnancies, even when it was scary, and said,
and how well timed. Now I'm going to bring in the recent Down syndrome thing on Facebook, or actually it's going on viral, and people are starting to respond. It's one of those moments where, okay, so there's a couple that shared that their baby, I think it was 5 months along or something like that in pregnancy, they decided to terminate or kill their child because it had maybe has Down syndrome. There's many misdiagnoses of that. So, bringing that together right now with what you're sharing, because you just kept saying yes and yes and yes, even though maybe, and they had a maybe, and they shut her down.
Yeah, even though maybe I could have left Jason with 8 children to care for if I had this disease. And Huntington's is not a pretty disease, and takes a lot of caregiving. And I told Jason many years ago that if I had it, I wanted to stay home. I wanted to be cared for in our home. And it's interesting because as we got close to doing this testing, there were dear people in our lives who said, it's okay. If you have it, we will be there to help. Someone specifically who said, I will be your caregiver if needed. And I just feel like, that was God telling me, like, it's okay.
Right.
You can be tested, whether it's negative or positive. It will all work out.
First of all, I'm so happy because I've known about a little bit about your discernment, and I'm just so grateful you're here and that you have done that. And that, it's just like, wow, we could have talked an hour just on this, but now I do want to turn it over to the God moments, the God lessons in all of this. I know you have to get back to your camp, so I can't hold you another hour.
It's okay.
But what are some of the things? Obviously the lessons have come on all along. You know what I mean? But now it's like, I just know when I get to the other side of a suffering, all of a sudden, all these lessons, all these things, it just like opens up your heart and your mind, and it's in gratitude. Praise God. What are some of the ways you've sensed God speaking to you in this recent negative diagnosis?
Yeah. So last November, our board of directors for Harvest Hope, we decided that this year, 2026, was going to be a year of, sustaining stability, really discerning where we're at, not adding anything new.
No more crazy ideas, Lynn.
This is the first year that we haven't added something new. So just, being and evaluating. And I'm so, so grateful for that, because they also knew that I was going through the testing process. So I'm so grateful for that. Now that we got this negative result, Jason and I are both like, what's next, God?
Full steam ahead.
Where are we going next?
And it might be just to sustain or add to in some small way.
We're kind of really trying to formulate that in our brains. One dream that we've had that I will have to talk more with you about is we want to write a book.
Yes.
And that's kind of what's planted on us right now. We're really pushing forward the research for Huntington's and trying to, that's kind of been stalled for various reasons, but trying to really push that forward. And just because I'm negative doesn't mean that we're going to stop what we're doing. We have so many other people in our lives that are impacted positively by this disease that we need to help get that research moving forward and advocating for people with Huntington's and for their families.
That just reminded me, you mentioned before the interview, survivor's guilt. Do you want to just briefly share a little bit about that?
Yeah. You know, like I said, when I found out I was negative, I cried uncontrollably, and I don't know where that came from. But I was so prepared to know that I had this, that now it's like I'm almost trying to figure out a different way of living because I've lived in fear for so long. And I'm free, but I haven't figured out how to live that freedom. Wow. You know what like? I know that sounds so weird.
Like survivor's guilt.
Like I'm just trying to figure out, like, okay, what do I do now? Not that I lived not doing things, but it was always in the back of my head.
You lived with faith, but faith and fear, because we can live with both. I mean, because there's sometimes things that hold us bound to still every day, like putting ourselves into God's care. But that doesn't mean we're not human and that we don't have thoughts like, okay, how long can I,
Yeah. So, I mean, I lived with that fear, but always trusting in God. But still, my planning, which I plan everything, was always around, okay, what if? What if I have this? Okay, what would Jason do if I had this and in 3 years I'm not here anymore and Michael's 8, 9, 10 years old? Like, so
here's the thing, like, we are all going to die. So now you're just join the rest of us.
Like, right.
We're getting old and our time is short. And so what are we going to do with the time we have? Now you get to just have the same thing the rest of us
exactly.
does. Really, it's just, and I think the lesson, which is so beautiful, which has brought my heart in times of worry and fear, because I'm a planner, is this presence of God in the present moment. Like we only have that. And you kind of have had to live that way. And I'm a huge planner too. But coming back, it settles my heart to realize, like, God is right now. He's right now in this moment. And that he doesn't live in the past. He lives right now.
And I'm glad you said that, because I do feel like since February, I've really recognized, I mean, I did live in the moment some before, but I'm really living in the moments now, and like not thinking about if I don't see this child get married or this, but really living in this is what I'm seeing right now. And like appreciate that God has given me the grace to be able to do that now, when maybe I didn't do it so much before.
I think people with a terminal illness that I've seen have had to learn that to be able to move through that in peace somewhat. But really, it's a lesson for all of us. I mean, nobody is, we could go out today and that's it.
Get in a car accident,
we don't know.
or you just don't know.
So realizing that each day is a gift, and you have this beautiful, bounteous farm with all these people coming and going and that you're affecting. And it's such a gift to everyone. And I think God has really shown through your lives. Do you have we've talked about you and Jason, and like that you have to be equally yoked to be able to even, move into some of the things you have. What would be your advice? Because I think young couples are struggling in this world right now. What would be some tips you would have for how to live a life of giving yourself as a couple over to God?
Oh, well, I mean, communicating, like, it's huge. Like, talk about everything. Over-communicate. We over-communicate so much. But I don't think we would be the way we are if we didn't. And often I say our kids might know too much, but we share so much with them because it just makes everything run smoother. I know it sounds sort of cliche, but, not going to bed angry. It just, and going to church together. Like that has been our thing. Like we go to church together all the time. Like it's very rare that Jason and I are not in church together. and pray for each other.
Right. And I think one thing I've seen in you, and I've interviewed your husband too, is as much as you love your spouse, God is, you go to him first, because then he'll order things.
Yep.
And
I've seen Jason, when he was principal, they had mass every Friday. So he was always at school mass on Friday. And then when he left his principal job, he kept going to mass on Fridays. And it might not be at a Holy Spirit anymore, but it might be at the cathedral or wherever works for him. But he's kept that in his routine. And I go to adoration on Fridays, and just always making that time and going to church as a family together and being that example for our kids. Our son, Sean, he'll be going to college this year, and he's going to college in town. And I said to him, so when school starts, where are you going to go to church? Because he'll be on the Moorhead side, so he'll be closer to St. Joe's. And I just kind of thought maybe he'd go there because it'd be closer. And he goes, well, Holy Spirit? We've always gone to 9:00 Mass at Holy Spirit. Why would I change that? And I just thought,
connection.
Yeah. And to know that we've ingrained that in them, that they still want that family connection through church, just felt,
you got to ease out of a family like yours. Like, you guys are so connected.
Yeah, we're very connected. We do, we do everything. And so
that's sweet. That's sweet. That's heartening for a mom too, because it's hard to, as our chicks start leaving. But,
it is.
Well, I want to come back to the question like I always do, and then I have to let you go. But what can large families teach us about God? I mean, we always have answered that question, but is there something like maybe to hold on to what God has taught you in having a large family, in saying yes? Anything that you can end with today?
I feel like I have had to learn to be vulnerable and trusting, vulnerable with being accepting of whatever is put on our plate, and trusting in God, and that He has a plan for all of us, and I know how overwhelming a large family can be. And for those who have large families, just to be able to have that trust that it's going to be okay. And God has a plan for each of those children. And it's a wonderful plan. And just to be able to, say yes to the next thing that God's asking you to do to help guide those children.
Something's coming to me that someone told me some years ago, and I'll end with this thought. If in doubt, and you said to do the thing you fear, err on the side of love. And I think you've erred on the side of love. And I'm so grateful, Lynn, for you and your husband and all of your kids too, that I can't wait to see what they do. Yeah. Thank you for saying yes to your large family. And I'm so grateful with you for your diagnosis. Again, negative diagnosis. Yeah. So
thank you.
What can large families teach us about God? Lynn did such a great job of sharing about the bounty of God and how saying yes to life, rather than depriving us, adds not only to our lives but those of others. Though I knew Huntington's disease would be part of our discussion, I hadn't thought deeply about how much it would tie in with the question. From the beginning, the Kotrabas could have said no to God, and many would have thought it a legitimate response to such a concerning possible diagnosis. Instead, they listened to God's voice, decision by decision, and it seems He has blessed their desire to follow Him tenfold. What if Lynn had learned she is a carrier of Huntington's? Somehow, God would have provided. But thankfully, we don't live in the what-ifs, but rather in the reality of today. As Lynn hinted, judgment about family size is really relative in a way. As the mother of 8, she no longer thinks that's a big number. As the mother of 5, I feel like a bit of a wimp next to my friends with twice as many children, and yet some with half as many as I have been wowed at our largest family. I will say that opening our hearts to a larger family for this current culture's standards was definitely an exercise in faith. Our very private decision became public in ways I was not anticipating, and it stretched us to have to consider, who do we answer to? God or the people in our lives who seemed to indicate we were either foolish or selfish? Well, the latter becomes pretty moot once the kid actually arrives. Because as challenging as it is to raise a larger family, and trust me, we were the ones who lived with the decision the most intimately, we never once said, if only we'd not had that one. In fact, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say, I wish I'd quit a kid or two back. But I have many friends who limited their families who said they regretted not having one more. The Catholic Church has been scolded for its refusal to adopt a contraception mentality as the rest of the age has, but I'm so grateful. I can't imagine any of our children not being here. It's unimaginable, in fact. Every human being has inestimable value and the potential to add love to the world in exponentially vast proportions. As Mother Teresa once said, saying there are too many children is like saying there are too many flowers. And I think I'll leave it at that for now. In a couple of weeks, we'll ask the question that might be applied to any of us at some point in our faith journeys. Why do I feel so disconnected from God? Until then, don't lose sight of the light.